check my post from last night, seeing how many D&D related questions I got. Oh, that's more than I expected. I take how much damage? If you're new to this channel, then every so often I like to do what I call a community involved video, where I make a YouTube post and ask people to contribute something that they would like to see me address within a video. Usually I try to do a thread, like is it hot takes, is it questions, is it your opinion on something in general, and then I respond to that. And so that's what I wanted to do with Dungeons and Dragons. So I asked my community to give me any questions they have related to D&D. Literally could be about anything as long as it's Dungeons and Dragons related, and I expected like 5, maybe 6 questions, because on this channel my D&D content has not been performing overtly well. Even though I've only done 2 videos so far, it still hasn't really been doing the best, so I didn't expect much. So 34 questions was quite a bit, but I do try to get to everybody's questions, so that's what we're gonna do. Now, in each of these videos, I always take a look at the channel members' questions first. That's how I kind of roll with this whole thing. So let's take a look at our 2 channel members who submitted questions on this post. First up, we have Delilah. Delilah says, favorite classes to play and why, specifically Pathfinder 2e. I have not played Pathfinder, D&D 5e, and D&D 5e 2024. I do not have the 2024 books yet, although with the job that I just started, I am going to be looking into picking them up very soon. I hope I can still get a hold of the special editions, but no promises on that one. But I am looking into getting a hold of Dungeons and Dragons 2024 soon. I've never played Pathfinder, but my favorite classes in general are the Bard and the Wizard. I enjoy playing both the Bard and the Wizard very, very much. They're 2 of the most fun classes to play, in my opinion. The Bard is just an all-around good support type of class. I don't really like playing super aggressive Bards. I prefer to be the role player buff/debuff type of bard, but in Wizards there's just so many possibilities. Wizards are a full-on, you can be a damage dealing, a utility wizard, a support wizard. There are just so many options. I really, really love Wizards in terms of like playing them, but if I had to choose between the Bard and the Wizard, the Bard is my favorite class to play all around. Then Tanzar says, have you heard of the D&D style game Everyone is John? Most of the time, D&D style game, people are talking about TTRPGs, and I have not. It's essentially D&D, but everyone is one character. I don't think that means it's D&D. Or one personality of the character, John. Every player has a goal: become president, ban pizza, drive a car to Canada, and that they need John to accomplish to win. Well, then it's nothing like D&D, because you don't win D&D. There's no winning in Dungeons and Dragons. It's a collaborative storytelling effort. The catch: failing at skill checks, getting knocked out, or falling asleep results in whoever is controlling John to lose control, and everyone then vies to take over. It's fun when played where players don't get to hear what John is up to unless they're in charge, to allow for absolute confusion when your personality takes over, unless the players are good at role-playing and ignoring meta-knowledge. It doesn't seem very fun to me. I'm gonna be so for real with you. That sounds like a fucking headache and a pain in the ass, and yeah, it doesn't seem like something I would enjoy. I'll be completely honest with you. It really doesn't. Now, the way that I like to do this is basically first come, first serve after the channel members have gotten their turn to go. So we sort by newest, go all the way to the bottom, and then we read from there. So I'm gonna shrink my camera a little bit so I'm not in the way. And we'll start down here with something, some thig, I guess. Something, I guess. What a name. I've never played D&D, but my question is, how powerful is Vecna in the world of D&D? What's his true max power? So we don't actually know what Vecna's true maximum power is. Vecna, from what we do know, Vecna is one of the most powerful beings in the verse. He is, I think he was the first Lich, if I'm correct. There's this really great video. I'm probably going to reference it a couple times because I know there's a couple of Vecna questions that in here, but I'm going to leave a video link down below from the D&D channel, Dungeons and Dragons Lore and Legends. They do a podcast every week where they go over the lore of D&D, and they did a 41-minute video on Vecna, which details the everything we know about Vecna. So I watched that video last night. It's a really great place to start, but if I were to give a ballpark, Vecna is like somewhere right below God status. So he's pretty much like demigods levels of power. He's incredibly strong. Like I said, one of the most powerful characters in the verse, hands down. Future Sabrina says, how difficult would it be to become a dungeon master? I'm still new to D&D, but want to learn more tips and understanding the concepts of D&D. Do you have any suggestions? And how far/powerful can I be as a warlock? So becoming a dungeon master isn't hard. Being a dungeon master that is good at it is what takes like time and effort, and there's some things you just can't teach. Like I have an entire playlist called DM Advice that will be linked down below and is just on this channel, and it's got 13 videos, and I could make a 100 video long playlist of DM advice and still not be able to teach you things like everything, because being a good dungeon master means learning from your mistakes. Even people who have been doing dungeon mastering, being a DM, however you want to phrase it, for decades will fuck up from here to there, because there's just so much stuff you have to keep track of. If you want to get into becoming one, though, it's as simple as finding a group of players, and then I always suggest running a pre-mod. Do not ever like try to start off with a homebrew story. Find a pre-mod. There's some pretty cheap ones out there for like 10 bucks that you can get, and they're like really short, like 5-session stories. Run like 2 or 3 pre-mods before you do anything else, so that you understand how to set up encounters, how to flow story narratives, how to give players the freedom of expression, things like that. Our next question, sorry, you also asked how far powerful can you be as a warlock? Every single class in D&D, sky's the limit. Once you get to level 20, which is the max level, your characters are basically demigods. Sometimes even gods, depending on the class. So it's all about how far your DM wants to take it. Most experienced DMs do not let campaigns go past like level 10, because level 10 is already reaching like this super powerful mecha status. I tried to run a level 20 campaign like a couple of times, and every time, by the time the player characters got to like level 12, I didn't know how to run encounters anymore, because they just one-shot like everything you put in front of them. So yeah, you can get pretty strong. Next up is Sunlight Cove, says, does creating a story in Dungeons and Dragons have to be purely fantasy, or you can make whatever you want with it? You can do whatever you want with it. At the end of the day, D&D is just a rule set for how to handle like systems, right? How to handle combat, how to handle creating potions, how to handle shop haggling, how to handle travel. At the end of the day, D&D is just a rule set. What you want to do with that rule set is you can go anywhere, right? Reflavor the classes into a bunch of sciencey sounding stuff, and you have a sci-fi story. Reflavor them into like beat cop type or like government things, and you've got a political story, right? Like, people use the D&D rule system for all sorts of different worlds that aren't fantasy. I would just recommend that if you want something that's not fantasy, to look for a different system, because there are tons of TTRPGs out there that have tons of different settings. There's a StarCraft TTRPG, I believe, for like science fiction settings. There's a I think it's called Spelljammer. It's mentioned somewhere in here. That's another science fiction setting. There are TTRPGs for being in the world of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, for fuck's sake. Like, there's a ton of TTRPGs out there. Yeah, you can use D&D for any kind of story, but I would suggest finding one that matches the setting you want to play in, because you'll be surprised how much like thought and effort goes into TTRPGs and making sure that you have the right systems for what you want. Dr. Menti says, I've been wanting to play D&D all my life, and I finally found a group to play with. Exciting! I'm very creative and really want to create my own campaign. The only thing is that it would be my first D&D experience ever outside of Baldur's Gate, so I don't know if I should make the campaign fully original, use one of the already made campaigns, or if I should play as a player first for other sessions. Even though this would be my first ever D&D experience, all my friends said they would still want to play it. Any advice on my situation? If you're going to be a DM, do not write your own campaign first. I used to be a like D1 pre-mod hater. Like, I absolutely could not stand pre-mods. I thought they were the stupidest things on the planet. I thought they were really, really dumb. And then when I ran my old pre-mod, when I ran my own pre-mod, I realized that a lot of the issues that I had as a dungeon master when I first started playing would have not happened if I'd have just ran a pre-mod. Because pre-mods, like I said earlier, pre-mods teach you, they teach you player encounter setting up, they teach you storytelling, good storytelling practices, they basically teach you how to be a DM through the concept of them telling you what to do every step of the way. And then once you've run like 1, 2, 3, 4 pre-mods, from there, you can start to like work on an original campaign, but there's also a ton of stuff you need to avoid when making an original campaign at first. Like, it's so hard. I want to make a full video on like all the mistakes people make when they make original campaigns, because like I'm waiting to be a player in a thing where somebody else is going to be a DM soon, and I'm sitting there watching them make all sorts of mistakes, but I can't tell them, hey, don't do that, because I don't know this guy very well. I just met him over like a Facebook group. So I'm just waiting for him to realize like all the shit that he's fucking up, because it's gonna come back to bite him in the ass. One of the big things is like trying to make like 12 major, like 100 major cities and the pathways to all those cities and all of that stuff. Like trying to make your own, like everything. Trying to make your own custom setting to go with your custom story is one of the biggest mistakes new DMs make. I would run, here's how I would do it. Run 3 to 5 pre-mods first, right? Get your feet wet, understand what it's like. Then run, I'd say like 5 to 6 one-shots. I have a video in my DM advice playlist on how to make a one-shot. Go watch that video, make some one-shots. One-shots are just single session D&D campaigns. Run those. Then run your own original stories in already pre-made settings. My personal favorite setting is Eberron, but there's the Feywilds, there's Sword Coast, there's so many pre-made settings out there. Run your own original stories and do like, I'd say like 10 of those. And then make your own custom setting to go with your own original stories. And the reason I lay that out like that is because I want you guys I don't want you guys to ever go through what I went through, where you get frustrated and pissed off and upset because you're trying to make this custom world along with your original story and nothing's working the way you want it to. And then eventually you're going to hit like rule number 3 of being a DM. Whatever your plan is, the players will fuck that plan up. And then that frustrates DMs even more, because the players will just do something you didn't expect. So you need to learn adaptability, you need to learn patience, you need to learn how worlds should function in TTRPGs. Really big things. Next up, we have Dr. Theo. Can edgelord characters ever work? Yes, they can, and I have actually already made a video on that. So I will leave that video linked down below along with all the playlists. But yes, short story, they can. You just have to build them with a very specific purpose in mind. And spoiler alert, that purpose is not, I trust no one and I will take over the world. Rawr. Gremlin WC8996 says, kind of a DBD D&D mix. What are your opinions on D&D demons, and what would you think about the D&D Demogorgon in DBD rather than the Stranger Things one? Would you like it? Do you think it fit? What would be its power, etc.? I'll be honest with you, I don't know that much about Demogorgons. I don't even think Demogorgons are in 5e, unless I'm wrong. All right, I finally found the Demogorgon in Mordecai's Tome of Foes. So it took like 3 different expansions before they even released a Demogorgon in 5e. Prince of Demons, the Sibilant Beast, and the Master of Spiraling Debts, Demogorgon is the embodiment of chaos, madness, and destruction, seeking to corrupt all that is good and undermine the order of the multiverse. See everything dragged in the howling events, depths of the abyss. The Demon Lord is a meld of different forms, with a saurian lower body and claw-webbed feet. I don't think this would work in Dead by Daylight, man. This is a huge fiend, which means it takes up like 25 feet of space, right? Medium 5, large is a 4x4, huge is a 3x3, so 15 feet. Yeah, this would, I don't think this would work I don't think this version of the Demogorgon would work in Dead by Daylight, just because of its size alone. To put it into perspective, on a, I'll see if I can put a size chart somewhere on screen here, but a medium creature takes up 1 square on a map. A large creature takes up a 2x2 block, and a huge creature takes up a 3x3 block. So, like, that's 15 feet of space to scale. And, yeah, no, that would be a gigantic fucking creature, man. Yeah, I don't think this would work in Dead by Daylight. This thing's just... This thing is ridiculous, actually. This is a BBEG. Yeah, this is like a BB... This is like the final boss of your campaign. Which I know we have Vecna, but Vecna, you can do things like give him a couple of spells, and he's also a medium creature, so... Like... Yeah, no. I don't think this would work. I do not think the actual Demogorgon from Dungeons and Dragons would ever work. Next up, Gene Plays. Does being a lesbian give seduction +1 in any given scenario? No. What are your thoughts on Strahd and the one-shot module he's a part of? So from what I've read in Curse of Strahd, he's actually a very interesting and complex villain. I didn't know he was part of a one-shot module, I'll be honest. I'll have to look into that. Stun Nula says, what is the best way to get into Dungeons and Dragons? How would you start as a new player? Are there any good games to play to familiarize yourself with D&D? I've never played before and I've always wanted to get into it. So no, there are no good games to play to familiarize yourself with it. I've heard that Baldur's Gate 3 is the closest thing that you can get to having like an actual Dungeons and Dragons experience. However, and I've never played it, but the thing is when you play D&D, you have to realize that sky's the limit, right? Whatever your imagination can think of, you're probably going to be able to do, especially with a good DM. The best way to get into it is to go on to Roll20 and put in that you want to join a group, or search for groups that are looking for new players and find one that matches your schedule. Most of the time those posts will be like, hey, we're playing on Tuesdays, we're playing on Sundays, we're playing on this day. So find one of those and then join that. Or if you wanted, you could join our Discord server and see if anybody is about to start a game that'd be willing to teach you. I would not recommend starting as a DM unless you absolutely have zero choice, in which case there are tons of guides out there for what it takes to get into DMing. But really all you need are a set of 7 dice, which are generally like $10, and you need the core rule books, which are $50 a piece, but you can get away with just running with the PHB. There is a starter kit, which last time I checked was about $30, I believe. So this is like a starter set. It comes with some dice bags, comes with some rule sets, and basically it would allow you to run a campaign with like some beginner stuff. If you just search D&D 5e starter kit, this one's only $20. Let me see what this one actually has in it. I hate that I cannot look inside. Fuck you, Walmart. But yeah, I would get the D&D starter set if you are having to DM. But for now, if you go to... All right, so you go to Roll20. If you roll20.net, and the page will look like this. Create yourself an account. I will go ahead and sign into mine real quick. And then once you get to your page, so this one's mine. Once you get to your page, if you hover over games and go to join a game, then there are tons, and I do mean tons and tons of posts that are looking for new players. So there's a tag called Welcome New Players. You can filter those out and just look for stuff. Try to get yourself into a game that's going to be able to that you're going to be able to have fun in. And yeah, that's basically the best ways to join. There are tons of other stuff for you to look into, but yeah. Next up, DAC, D&D's Monster Smashability tier list. I do not have 12 and a half hours to sit down and do that. Silver says 4901, as someone who struggles with character creation and making any backstory backstory, any tips on how to improve? Oh, that's such a tough one. I don't know. Steal from your favorite novel, I guess, from your favorite character. A lot of times I like to work backwards. So instead of starting with my backstory and then going into my class, I like to start with my class and my race and then work backwards into my backstory. So if I want to build what's a basic thing I can do? If I wanted to build a champion fighter, right, who's a human, I might take that and then work backwards and see if I can work him into the palace guards, or he was he was a training under a war vet, or he was a squire ready to become a knight and then he lost his master or something like that, right? So I would start with the class you want to play and then work your way back from that class. What led your character to being in that class? For example, when I was creating my necromancer, and you can use this if you want to, by the way, I don't care. When I was creating my necromancer, Nikolai, his backstory is that he was the village doctor, and when his wife died, he tried to revive her, and an accident disfigured him. But now he's still studying necromancy to try to get his wife back, right? Something like that. You start with the class and then work your way backwards into what could have made your character become that class is probably my biggest tip. But if you don't want to do that, again, just yoink some shit. Like your favorite book, one of the characters, what's their backstory? Use that. Nobody, I'm not gonna say no one's gonna judge you. No one should judge you, because 90% of D&D is everybody at the table just stealing their favorite plot devices and shoving them into the game. Some dude in a box. I believe I've asked this a few times in your server before, but what would be the best way to get into D&D? Is there a certain campaign you'd recommend for beginners or something else entirely? So the best way to get into D&D is, like I said earlier, you use, Roll20, or you post at your local game shop that you're looking to join. A lot of cities have Facebook groups dedicated to Dungeons and Dragons, so you can get on Facebook and search up your city, Dictorville Dungeons and Dragons, and most of the time someone's created a group around that. Or if you're in my server, you can use I will pull it up actually. So in my server, there is a normal Dungeons and Dragons channel that you can use to just discuss D&D. And then there's also a looking for friends Dungeons and Dragons. I think that this is, nobody uses this. I'm gonna be so fucking for real. The last time anybody used it was on May 5th. When they discovered that it's here. But I would literally I've been thinking about making a role. So we have an adventurer's role, for people who want to play video games together. That's something too. If you're watching this video and you want more people to play video games with, you get in the D&D server, you at adventurers. That is a role specifically given to people who want to be tagged whenever somebody's looking for someone to play Overwatch, Dead by Daylight, Apex, whatever the case may be. Basically, it's an LFG feature within the server. I've been thinking about finding one specifically for Dungeons and Dragons, which I don't know what I would call it because Adventurers is already used for the video game thing, but that's basically what I'm thinking about doing. But yeah, there's tons of ways to do it. Those are all the best ways. In terms of certain campaigns, I'd recommend just whatever the starter set gives you. Buy a starter set and then use whatever that campaign is. That would probably be your best bet. I am not overtly familiar with pre-mods in general. I don't own a lot of them. The only one I own is Strahd, and the only reason I own it is because it came in that really cool coffin back there. I don't know if you guys can see that. Hold on. Yeah, this big coffin looking thing is a Curse of Strahd special edition manual. It's yeah, it's interesting to say the least, So I actually had to leave for an hour and a half to take care of something regarding my job. And now I'm back and I have spaghetti. So the rest of this video is going to be me eating spaghetti while answering your questions. Anyway, where were we? C-Nog DBD-UYT says, a giant bear is about to attack my party's base camp. I wish to confront the bear in a glorious battle and save my friends. Could you roll for my success rate? Yeah, I got you. You have a 34% chance to succeed. Good luck. Ambient Man asks, does Vecna in DBD behave like he does in DND? Never played it before. Well, I'll tell you this. Just playing Dungeons and Dragons isn't going to give you a clue on who Vecna is, because your campaign might not even involve Vecna. And to my knowledge, Vecna's shown up very, very rarely throughout things like pre-mods and stuff like that. So, generally speaking, the best way to get a clue on Vecna is, I mentioned it earlier, the lore video that's going to be linked down in the description down below. But generally speaking, Vecna is a very arrogant, powerful man. As far as he's concerned, nobody is above him, even though he's been thwarted several times. But overall, yeah, pretty close. Jesse Bradley says, how do you manage a min-maxer in a party of otherwise well-balanced player characters? Well, for one, I don't really like the concept of managing a min-maxer, as if a min-maxer is like a problem player. More specifically, the challenge of running with a min-maxer in the party can sometimes be pretty painful for like combat encounters. All you gotta do is find their weakness. Like, for example, if someone's min-maxing a barbarian, chances are they're going to be loaded up with every resistance under the sun. The only thing that those barbarian characters aren't resistant to is psionic damage or psychic damage. So just throw some of those in there. Look at the monster manual, you know, Google, try to find things that do psychic damage. If they're like fighting bandits, have at least one bard in the bandit party that can cast Vicious Mockery on them. Stuff like that. If you want to be, you know, give them challenging encounters, just find what their weaknesses are and put those in the encounters that they come across. Dominic's Malley 9394 asks, who are some of the most powerful beings in D&D, for example Vecna, and compared to stuff like DBD killers or Marvel characters and so on, where would you place them in terms of power? For example, comparing Vecna to as powerful as Doctor Strange or saying he's weaker than the Nurse lore-wise, who are the top dogs in D&D and where do they sit power-wise compared to other worlds, universes, franchises? You gotta understand that D&D is a world of magic. So the most powerful things, honestly though, no, D&D is a place where gods exist. Like, there's no debating it. There's no like, oh, they're just kind of like these maybe things that might, no, gods just genuinely exist in the world of D&D. So, you know, take of that what you will, but there are literal gods that control the world in D&D. It's probably my best answer. I don't really do power scaling that often. I don't really like power scaling because it comes down to, a lot of the times power scaling devolves into shit flinging. And it's also just kind of, it could be a fun discussion if everybody was cordial about it, but I don't like personally getting into it because it's just not worth it half the time. Wildfire 4811 says, what does the setup to playing a campaign look like? I actually have a video for that. Do I have a video for that? No, I just have a video for setting up a session, not a campaign. Generally speaking, to like set up for an entire campaign, you don't really want to do too much. So if you are, actually no matter what campaign you're doing, you want to know the starting location and you want to know the ending location. And then the middle bits get figured out as you play. So your characters are all starting out as prisoners. Just throwing something out there, right? You know they're all going to start out as prisoners, and that prison that they're in is going to give them like a nugget of knowledge to follow that will eventually lead to them killing Vecna, just to pick one, right? That's probably not how it goes, but you want those 2 points, and then you want to plan out. I always try to be 3 sessions ahead. I have videos in the playlist down below for how to set up a session, how to run a one-shot, things like that. Because if you can run a one-shot, you can run a session, is basically how that goes. I have things for like setting up encounters, how to travel, and I'll be doing more from there. But get your start and end points, and then try to be 3 sessions ahead. Each session should have a goal in mind, right? I want my players to be from point A to point B by the end of the session. I want my players to learn this lore drop by the end of the session. I want my players to be prepared to enter the dungeon by the end of the session. And you want to go session by session. Plotting out an entire campaign will drive you fucking insane. It will legitimately drive you up the goddamn wall. And you'll get pissed. So that's just something from for you to think of. Dave 3895 says, is there something like a dead ringer from TF2? Not to my knowledge, but that's not to say you couldn't create something like that. The beauty of D&D is that the sky's the limit and you can create pretty much anything you want with your DM's approval, of course. And if you're the DM, then fuck it, go ham. Subwoofer Vertex, if I'm fighting Vecna and I cast Exodia the Forbidden One, what happens? He turns you to dust. Brian Gentry says, what's your most memorable encounter, combat, or role-playing? And what is the D&D Darwin Award story you remember vividly? I think my most memorable encounter, I wasn't even in the encounter. I was just at the table when these 2 players were doing the encounter. So we had finished looting an old bank and found like a bunch of valuable gems. And we sent the 2 rangers into the city to fence the gems, essentially. Not really fence, but sell them off. And they walked in, and the woman behind the counter at the shop was an elven woman. And so she was looking at them, and she's like, what do you want? And they're trying to persuade her to give us like high prices for these gems. So the first ranger rolls a nat 1 on his charisma check, and it basically, so he was like, what he wanted to say was, hi, beautiful, we're here to sell some gems that don't compare to your beauty. Fucking cheesy, right? Anyway, he rolls the nat 1, and instead what comes out is, you have a beautiful butt, we have gems. And so the other ranger tries to dissuade her anger, and he's like, I want to say I agree that he's a fucking idiot too. And he rolled a nat 1, and so instead his words came out with, I agree, I want to fuck you too. And then they got chased by city guards back to our camp. D&D Darwin Award story. There was a time that I put a river in front of my players, and I described the river as being slightly greenish, which was very weird to see in the forest that they were in. Like normally river water, you know, would be like clear and stuff like that. But I said that it had a slight green tinge to it. And once in a while, you could hear moaning coming from the water. And one of my players just walked up and drank from the river. Didn't try to inspect it, didn't wait for the party to identify what it might be, none of that. He just walked up and drank from the river. And then he had to roll, like, his death saves because it was the river Styx. And drinking from it basically kills you. And I tried to save him, but he failed all of his death saves, and so his soul got sucked into the river Styx and he lost his character. He was pretty mad about it, but I was like, I don't know why you would I don't know why you would do that. Why would you ever drink from the river like that? Hex Twink, amazing name, says, one time I asked if I could join a D&D campaign mid-campaign and I could make my own character to replace someone. I chose a mimic paladin barbarian that mimics a suit of armor. The group was split by whether or not that was okay. Was that an okay character, or are there specific rules on character species? So, first off, I don't know why you went barbarian when you're a suit of armor, but I digress. First off, mimics are monstrosities. They are creatures that exist purely to eat things that touch them, and that is it. So, I as a DM wouldn't allow it. But that's the key thing. If your DM allowed it, it was okay. Like, your DM is the rules. That is just the facts of the matter. Your DM is the rule book. If your DM says it's okay, then it was okay. If the rest of the players don't like it, they can take up their grievances with the DM, but if your DM said it was okay, then it was okay. I wouldn't allow it because, as funny on the surface as that sounds, to me, logistically, it wouldn't, like, a mimic as a player character wouldn't work. And so I wouldn't have allowed it, but I wasn't your DM, so yeah. That if the DM said it was okay, it was okay. Joe Perch says, what is your favorite non-player handbook class race combo to play, and why? Bold of you to assume I ever get to fucking play this game. I'm kidding. I'm mostly a DM, but there's not really, I would say my favorite non-PHB class is the Hexblade Warlock, and my favorite non-PHB race is the Goliath, but I wouldn't necessarily run those at the same time. But the Goliath is my favorite non-PHB race for sure. Certainly not Timmy. That sounds like somebody named Timmy would say. What should someone do if their DM does not call on them to ask what their character wants to do? Speak up. Hey DM, you skipped me. Most DMs will be like, oh shit, my bad. You got to remember that the DM is in charge of a lot of shit, right? Even at a basic table of, say, 4 players, right? 4 is like the average party size. The DM is in charge of all 4 of you assholes. They're in charge of the setting. They're in charge of all the NPCs. They're in charge of the possible routes you're about to take. They're in charge of the knowledge of where they're needing you to go and what they're needing to happen for that session. They're in charge of what could be happening behind the scenes. They're in charge of so much stuff. So sometimes in the, midst of combat or roleplay encounters or whatever, the DM might forget you. Now, if it's a common occurrence, right? Like if every single session, 5 to 7 times a session, the DM just isn't calling on you to see what you do, you need to talk to your DM. Find out if there's a personal problem they have with you, or if they don't expect much out of your character, in which case maybe it's a issue with the way you built your character to not really provide much to the table. But if it's 1 or 2 times, every so often, just be like, yo, you skipped me. Most DMs, 99% of DMs will go, oh shit, my bad. Let me, go ahead. What did you want to do? Thunder Spirit 87. Which, by the way, I just want to give a quick shout out to Thunder Spirit. They have been basically a member of the YouTube comment community for so long. Always brings me joy to see their little PFP and stuff pop up. What are some classes and races you'd recommend for a beginner player, as well as one you'd say wait till you've gained a bit more experience playing D&D before choosing? The best beginner class. All races can be used by anybody of an experience, but The best beginner class, hands down, is fighter. It's very straightforward, very basic, has the least amount of additional shit you need to keep track of. Fighter is always going to be your best bet. And if you want to go a step further, the subclass of champion fighter is even better, right? Because Battlemaster has like some like additional bonus stuff you can do. If you want just a straightforward character, fighter, champion, subclass. That's it. There you go. That's how you do that. The hardest class to play is probably the wizard, although I think artificer might give the wizard a run for their money, because there's just so much shit you got to keep track of. You got to keep track of your spell slots. You got to keep track of your all of your spells known. You got to keep track of what spells you've prepared each day. You got to keep track of what the spells all do. You got to keep track of all the situations the spells can be used in. You got to keep track of how you learn spells and how much money you use to learn the spells. And Wizard's just a very complicated class. I very often push new players away from Wizard. And I usually put them, if they want some kind of spellcaster, I'll usually put them with like the Bard, which doesn't have to prepare spells, or I'll put them with like the Paladin or the Warlock, which both don't have a lot of spells to work with. So realistically speaking, if you're looking for like the most beginner-friendly class, it is the Fighter Champion subclass. Nicholas Pierce 2250. I am someone who loves to run a lot of homebrew. Godspeed to that. Like a lot. This has become even more pronounced as I'm preparing for my Spelljammer campaign. Kind of like Treasure Planet style, but with a lot more magic and Star Wars mixed in. I think I've heard of Spelljammer. I've heard it's really fun. I've kind of got lost in the sheer volume of things going on. While I think my players will find all these systems interesting, ship combat, customization, weapon rewards, new classes, and other stuff too, I find that my players might not engage or even understand all these systems. As someone who doesn't want to discard these systems and knows my players will like at least one of them, what should I do to ensure that my players are able to engage with these systems? Well, it sounds, and I'm not judging you here, but it sounds like you want to have your cake and eat it too, right? It sounds like you want the complex systems knowing that the headache that they're going to cause, and you don't want to do what's going to make it easier on you and your players. So my only suggestion is that each of the systems are introduced slowly, right? You introduce ship combat one session, and then 3 or 4 sessions later, you can introduce another system, right? 3 or 4 sessions later, introduce another one. You introduce them slowly and effectively, and where they make sense. But the hardest thing for me to do the hardest thing about me trying to answer your question is, I don't know everything that Spelljammer involves, and I don't know everything that you're trying to homebrew into it. And I also wonder why you're like trying to homebrew a bunch of stuff into it. Wouldn't it be better to let your players know what the base stuff is before you start changing stuff? That's my opinion. FMT player asks, is it possible in the D&D universe to fish a mimic out of the water like a fish with a fishing rod, and it will have a level of 31 and be quite powerful with a sign that reads definitely not a mimic attached to it? If the mimic's in the shape of like a door or something, maybe. Mimics don't really have levels though. I feel like this is a reference that I'm not getting. Ninja8224 says, let's say your DM allows you to carry someone and you give your strength stat 2, should that you can even though... Let's say your DM allows you to carry someone and you give your strength stat. Even though the DM didn't ask and your friend got mad at you for saying your strength stat because the DM can say, never mind, give me a strength stat. I'm asking, can a DM say you can do something but then backpedal and say you can't a second later? Yes. You got to remember, and this is why not everybody should be a DM. The DM is God. The DM is the rule maker. The DM is the one who says what goes. And it's a lot of power for a DM to have. So the DM can do whatever the fuck they want. Which is why not everybody should be a DM, because some people take that power trip a little bit too far and ruin the experience for everyone else. So to answer your question, yes, they can. Should another player get mad at you? No, probably not. Carrying capacity in D&D is really fucking confusing. But generally, if you're trying to carry another player, if you're trying to carry another person, that should just be doable, unless you're like a goblin or some shit, right? Like if you're just like a normal size human and you're like, say, like a barbarian or something like that, carrying another person, that happens in real life all the time, right? So generally speaking, I don't think most DMs would give a shit. If you give your strength stat, most DMs are probably going to wave it off like, dude, you're just carrying your friend. You know, it's something that happens often in real life. You're an adventuring party. I expect that you're going to have the strength to carry your comrades, right? So I wouldn't worry too much about it. But to answer your question, yes, the DM can say, yeah, you can do that, and then pull it back later. Although most DMs won't, because it causes unnecessary problems. Cyclo says, meme question. What are your thoughts on the peasant railgun, where they make insta-killing even one of the toughest bosses? The meme is funny, but it doesn't work the way that people think it does. So when you think about it, right, you hand something to someone and they grab that thing to then hand to another person, right? So you're doing I forget what the technical term is, but I think it's called like a train or something. Like you scoop up a bucket of water, hand it to this person, that person hands it to the next person. That's the theory behind the peasant railgun, where you line up like 100 peasants, and in the span of 6 seconds, which is what a turn is, they move a rock down, and then the last one throws it. When you're handing something to someone, do they instantly take it and do like that? No. They gotta grab it, and then they move it over here, right? And if you're thinking about a rock, you're thinking about like a heavy rock, then when they move it, the momentum stops when the next person grabs it, right? So even though they're technically moving the rock down, you know, 100 peasants in 6 seconds, it's losing momentum every time it changes hands. And the last peasant to throw it, their strength stat is what would count that. So it's a funny idea until you think about it. Then it really doesn't work. Clowny Thunder says, any tips on few player campaigns 1 to 2? What do you mean tips? Like, what are you having trouble with? Generally speaking, 1 to 2 players are great for like mini campaigns, like 3 to 4 session campaigns, or even like a bunch of one shots. I once had a period of time for like, I'd say like 2 or 3 months, where I only had 2 people interested in D&D, and I would run like, I'd run like a one shot a week, just for fun. You know, it was they had their same characters and everything, just each session was like a brand new story start to finish. Was pretty fun. I did run a full-fledged campaign with just 2 people, but eventually recruited like 3 or 4. Generally speaking, when that happens, I'll try to like give them an NPC or 2 to like fill in gaps. So they were a paladin and a cleric. Yeah, they were a paladin and a cleric. So I gave them, I told them both to pick a class to add to their party. And I would run some NPCs to help them. So they picked a bard and I think a bard and a barbarian or something like that. Or bard and a fighter, something like that. So I just kind of gave them that to flesh out the party a little bit more. But generally speaking, you can run with 1 to 2 people. It works perfectly fine. I've seen one-on-one D&D campaigns last years. I was never in them, but I've heard of people who they only have one friend that wants to play, and so one person's the DM, one person's the player, and then they just narrate the adventures of that player. It can be fun sometimes. It can be interesting. So yeah, there's really nothing wrong with it. If you're having specific issues, like if you're the DM and you're having specific issues, then let me know in the comment section and I'll address those issues like specifically, either in a video or I'll just reply to your comment and see what I can do. And then next up is Clomlong1. What is the mimic and how was it formed? So I saw this right before I started recording, and I didn't know if I wanted to just straight up read you the mimic's history from the DMG, or like try to give you like from memory But I will give you, let me open up the page and I'll like give you like a basic rundown, right? So mimics are monstrosities, which means that they're not necessarily natural beings, but they have basically evolved to eat things, to eat humanoids and adventurers. They're shape-shifting predators, basically. So they take the form of not only chests, but they can take the form of doors, of planks of wood, of tools like farm tools. There's a creature called a mimic house, which is fucking insane, and it is based off of that movie Monster House. 2004, I think that movie came out. One of my all-time favorite movies, by the way. Just fun fact about you, for you guys, Monster House is one of my all-time favorite films. I think it was really cool. But basically what the mimic is it's a creature that learned that the easiest way to catch prey is to pretend to be something the prey wants to interact with. And that's basically what they are. They're predators, they're hunters. Think of it like a trapdoor spider, right? Trapdoor spider evolved to have a little hinge on its burrow, so it could just come out and snatch anything that walks by. A mimic is very similar. Except the mimics are their instinct is, okay, if I transform into a treasure chest, which is what I see all of these adventurers touching, they'll come to touch me, and then I can eat it. Except not in as many words, because they have an intelligence of 5. They're kind of stupid. But instinctually, they can transform into any object. And then they use that transformation to catch their prey. Is basically what a mimic is. Hope that makes sense. And that's everything, guys. That's all of the questions that I had. Thank you guys for responding to the post. I really appreciate it. I was shocked to see so many. Oh, it's the pointy hat. That's who that is. I was shocked to see so many questions. I really enjoyed this. If you're watching this video and you missed the post, leave some of your questions down below. I might do a part 2. That sounds kind of fun. I might try to do these like every couple of weeks or something. It's just really fun to sit there and just ramble off random D&D stuff. But yeah. Other than that, very great, big special thank you to my channel members listed on screen now. You want to find out how to become a channel member today, get awesome perks like seeing videos early, merch discount codes, and more, then please click that join button down below. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one.